We're beginning to get what seems to be more and more evidence that Starfield might just be getting a reveal sometime soon. And when I say soon, I mean in the next couple of weeks. So I want to make something very clear. I'll be providing evidence within this video that could point toward Starfield being revealed and released this year, as well as discussing the reasoning. However, please do not take this video as a confirmation that Starfield is releasing in 2020. This video is purely for discussion, and the most realistic release window is still 2021. But I found this evidence intriguing enough to share it with you all to get your opinions on what's going on here. With that said, let's begin with one of the most recent things, and that being something that multiple Reddit users picked up on over the last few days. That being an update to the Starfield website. For starters, now when European users access the web page, they'll now see the game has a PEGI 18 rating at the bottom, which was not there before. I even used a VPN so I could check for myself. The PEGI 18 rating is indeed there. Just if you want to see it for yourself, make sure your cache has been cleared on your browser. Now, that alone doesn't actually mean too much, as we have seen games get PEGI ratings years before launch, but it's the fact that it was updated around now of all times. To add to that, ESRB, which from my understanding doesn't give out ratings until a game is feature complete, so it's not like PEGI, which often gives out ratings years before launch. Before, the webpage for North American servers would simply display an ESRB privacy certified and rating pending. It's now been updated to add the text rating description pending, possibly implying the rating is finished and pending on the final summary or descriptors, which I'll display the one for Cyberpunk 2077 as an example. The ESRB doesn't just simply slap a rating onto a game, but also provide descriptors and summaries on the games. Again, this could mean nothing, but then why was it added to the webpage? The specific rating description pending text is not featured on either the Deathloop or Ghostwire Tokyo pages, so why is it on the Starfield page, and why was it added now? Time to take a look at some trademarks. ZeniMax Media recently filed for some more trademarks for Starfield, that being back in October 2019. Just as the end of April, so just a few weeks ago, those trademarks have now reached the following event: approved for pub, principal register. This means the final review prior to publication has been completed and the application will be published for opposition. Here's why that could mean a 2020 release. Let's take a look back at two major BGS Maryland releases, starting with Skyrim's latest trademarks. When did they reach this specific trademark milestone? The first trademark reached this event in January 2011, another in May 2011, and the most recent in September 2011, all within the year and just ahead of the game's launch in November 2011. What about Fallout 4? All four of Fallout 4's trademarks reached this event in September 2015, just 2 months before the game's release. For BGS specifically, the only trademarks that really break this pattern are for merchandise, abandoned trademarks, and games that don't necessarily have to be trademarked. But again, it's not a confirmation by any means, as there are many trademarks that don't follow this trend in the gaming industry. But it does seem to be turning into a trend for Bethesda Game Studios games. While I don't think either of these two pieces of evidence come anywhere close to confirming a 2020 release date, I thought they were interesting enough to point out. But I'm basing these two things on top of all the other evidence that we have, as the only reason I even bring up the possibility of Starfield releasing this year is because that is actually a possibility, and it isn't an outlandish thought to have, though it could definitely be seen as too hopeful. We know Bethesda will be participating in the Summer Game Fest event, which is running currently, and to the end of August. During this event, they have already revealed the Fallout 76 roadmap, they teased the Doom Eternal DLC, they've shown off and released the Doom Eternal Update #1 and the Elder Scrolls Blades on the Switch, and have also been showing off and are about to release the Elder Scrolls Online's next expansion. But neither of those seem to be officially a part of the event and were just randomly dropped on Bethesda's social media pages as normal. No mention from the Summer Game Fest social media accounts. So as far as I'm aware, they were not a part of Summer Game Fest. They just happened to release around this time. We also know Bethesda had an E3 showcase planned for this year before we were all put on lockdown. So Bethesda has a number of things to show off this year. It's just a matter of what that consists of. So what else supports a 2020 release window? In a podcast with Todd Howard back in 2018, he made his statement that their game in full production was using the old animation engine, and their project after that, which was in pre-production, was using a new animation engine.
Take an animation system change that we're doing right now. we're finishing for one of our projects, though that's a project that's in pre-production, getting a new animation system, whereas the one that's in full production is using the old one.
And funny enough, people still argue to this day on whether the game in full production was Fallout 76 or Starfield. Keep in mind, this podcast took place before Fallout 76 was even announced, so the confusion there makes it more unclear. So let's try to clear things up a bit. Todd Howard, in an interview with Geoff Keighley at E3 2018, said the following.
Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6, are they in production now?
I would say Elder Scrolls 6 is in pre-production, and Starfield is in production. It's a game we've been making for a while.
Well, okay, so you're able to play Starfield now.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good way to say it. Starfield is playable.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls 6, not in that way yet.
So by that statement alone, it seems like he was definitely referring to Starfield as the game in full production, as not only was it in production at the time of E3 2018, a few months after the podcast, but he also clarified that it was a game they've been making for a while. He then went on to say Starfield was playable, and not in the way that the Elder Scrolls 6 is. So not just a basic playable state. So it was already deeper into the development cycle. To make it even more clear that it was deeper into development, here are two more quotes from God Howard himself. It's different, but if you sit down and play it, you would recognize it as something we made, if that makes sense. It has our DNA in it. It has things that we like, but it has a lot of new systems we've been thinking about for a while that fit that kind of game really well. We'll talk about it in the future. See, now I wish I hadn't announced it. So one thing I want to point out there is that he claimed that it has a lot of new systems that they've been thinking about for a while that fit that kind of game really well, meaning that a lot of the systems for this game were already a thing back in 2018. Meaning it was far into development. And then here's a part of the IGN interview from June 2019.
And so we've had a vision of that game. It's a game I've wanted to make for a very, very long time. And we felt post Fallout 4, we knew during Fallout 4, our next thing was going to be Starfield.
Preparing
first of all, it's a
yourself.
project we've already worked on for, what year is this?
2019.
Okay, so we're 3.5 years in.
Yeah.
You know, we started before that.
Bethesda Game Studios Maryland has also received a larger workforce specifically for Starfield, that being from the newly acquired studio, BGS Dallas, back in 2018. BGS Dallas was acquired to assist BGS Maryland on Starfield development, and they were acquired when BGS Maryland was already deep into development, likely for the last final push to wrap up the game. But BGS Dallas isn't the only studio assisting on Starfield, as all BGS's studios and some ZeniMax studios will be chipping in where needed. We've seen this in the past with both Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, likely also occurring with previous games as well. Here's where things get even more interesting. Back around December 2019, Bethesda Softworks in Rockville, Maryland put up job listings for QA, that being quality assurance. To be more specific, the job listing was for game testing. So it seems like they were starting game testing for what was most likely a BGS Maryland project. But here's where things get much more interesting. You may have missed my Starfield gameplay reveal at E3 2020 or Fallout 3 Remake speculation video, in which I discuss another job listing at BGS Maryland, but this time for a video editor that can capture and edit HD and 4K game footage. One of the responsibilities being to market the company and its games. The primary studio that works on Fallout 76 is BGS Austin, not BGS Maryland, so it's most likely not to do with Fallout 76 at all. I followed that video up with another on January 26th, 2020, discussing the most important part of this puzzle. That video was titled, "The Elder Scrolls 6 Might Be Headed into Full Production." In that video, I brought up even more new job listings, all for BGS Rockville, Maryland. That being for a UI programmer, tools programmer, lighting artist, gameplay programmer, and associate animator for motion capture. These job listings were made at the beginning of this year. We know Starfield was already deep into development by 2018, so none of these job listings would have been for Starfield. In fact, they're all job listings that would correlate with the Elder Scrolls 6 getting ready to enter full production, which we all know what that means, as BGS Maryland only primarily works on one project in full production at a time. That means Starfield is going to be releasing sometime soon. The most noteworthy was the tools programmer, which was a job listing to do with design, implements, and maintaining project development tools. So someone working on the development tools for the Elder Scrolls 6. If Starfield is being announced and released this year, when would the announcement happen? A lot of people have been saying that since it hasn't been announced yet, there's no way it's happening in 2020, but I guess those people don't realize that BGS typically announces their games at the end of May or the beginning of June. If it's happening this year, we should know within the next couple of weeks. That being said, Starfield is said to be one of BGS's biggest titles in terms of game-to-game advancements. We have no real information on the game, no confirmations of any sort, no timeline, and all of this is purely speculation on non-concrete evidence. So if you don't believe all of this leads to a Starfield release in 2020, I don't want to try to convince you otherwise. The reason for that is because it's better to be surprised than let down, and I don't want to be the reason that you were let down. I just wanted to provide you with all of this information so that you could think about it for yourselves. Either way, I would love to know what you think about all of this information down in the comments. Do you think Starfield is coming out in 2020, 2021, or even sometime after that? Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments section below. But that's it for this video. I will be sure to stay on top of the latest Starfield news to keep you all in the loop. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please smack that like button down below, subscribe to the Good Fight if you haven't already, and ring that bell icon to stay updated in all of my future videos. Be super greatly appreciated as always, and until next time, this is Epoxy, signing off.